He came home a millionaire. His wife was found in a dirty alley, alone, hurt, and ignored by everyone who walked past her. What he did next didn't make the news. It didn't need to. The whole city felt it anyway. This is the story of Daniel Harmon, a man who spent 15 years building a fortune, came home to his worst nightmare, and showed everyone what real power actually looks like when it's used for the right reason. Daniel didn't grow up with money. He grew up with a father who worked double shifts at a factory and a mother who clipped coupons every single Sunday. He knew what it felt like to want things you couldn't have. So when he started his first business at 26, a small logistics company out of a rented office with 2 employees, he worked like his life depended on it, because in his mind it did. 15 years later, that small company had turned into a holding group worth hundreds of millions. Daniel had offices in 4 cities, a team of over 300 people, and a reputation for being someone you did not want to cross in a business deal. But the people who actually knew him, really knew him, they said the same thing. He was loyal, he was fair, and he loved his wife Elena more than anything he had ever built. Elena was warm in a way that Daniel wasn't. Where he was sharp and calculated, she was open and kind. She volunteered at a children's hospital every Thursday. She remembered everyone's birthdays. She was the kind of person who made a room feel lighter just by walking into it. Together, they balanced each other out perfectly. So when Daniel landed back in the city after 3 weeks in Dubai, all he wanted was to get home, sit on the couch with Elena, and do absolutely nothing. He texted her from the airport. No reply. He called, voicemail. He told himself she was probably in the shower or out running an errand. But something small and uncomfortable was sitting in his chest that he couldn't quite shake. Then his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was from a young woman named Maya, 23 years old, a nursing student. She had found Elena in an alley behind Merchant Street, sitting on the ground, wrist hurt, ribs bruised, a cut along her jaw. Maya had recognized Elena from a charity gala photo she'd seen in a local magazine months before. She didn't have Daniel's number, so she tracked down his company's website and sent a message through the contact form. The message said, "I have your wife. She's safe with me. Please come." Daniel read it once, then again. Then he looked up at his driver and said quietly, "Turn around." When he got to that alley and saw Elena, his wife, the woman he'd spent half his life building a future with, sitting on cold, wet concrete, wrapped in a stranger's jacket, holding a paper coffee cup with shaking hands, something changed in him. Not broke, changed, like a door closing very slowly, very deliberately, until it clicked shut. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He knelt down in front of her, took both her hands in his, and said 2 words. "I'm here." Elena told him what happened. She had been walking back from lunch with a friend when 3 people, 2 men and a woman, followed her around the corner. They grabbed her bag, shoved her to the ground hard enough to crack her phone screen and bruise her ribs, took everything, and walked away like they had just bought something at a shop. And then people walked past. One man actually stepped over her, looked right at her, and kept walking. She had called out for help at least 4 times before Maya stopped. Daniel took Elena to the hospital. The doctors confirmed the sprained wrist, the bruised ribs, and a mild concussion. They told her she was lucky. It could have been a lot worse. Daniel thanked them, squeezed Elena's hand, and then walked into the hallway alone. He made 1 phone call, 6 minutes long. Then he went back and sat beside his wife's bed for the rest of the night. Over the next 72 hours, the city got a quiet education in what it means to make an enemy of the wrong man. Daniel had invested years earlier in one of the city's largest private surveillance companies. That relationship meant access, legal, documented access, to footage from multiple cameras along Merchant Street. By that same evening, his legal team had pulled footage from 6 different angles. By the following morning, all 3 attackers had been clearly identified. By the afternoon, his team had compiled a full evidence package, names, timestamps, movement patterns, everything, and hand-delivered it to the district attorney's office. The police hadn't even finished their initial report, but Daniel wasn't done. The footage also showed him something else. The man who had stepped over Elena, the one who had looked directly at a hurt woman on the ground and decided it wasn't his problem. He wasn't a criminal. He was a senior executive at a real estate firm, a firm that had been in quiet deal negotiations with one of Daniel's companies. For the better part of 4 months, a deal worth a significant amount of money to that firm. Daniel sent 1 email, 3 sentences. The deal was over. Word moves fast in that world. Other firms noticed. Nobody said anything out loud, but they noticed. Then there was the restaurant. The owner had watched Elena being followed as she left. His head of security had flagged it on the interior cameras. The owner had hesitated, decided not to get involved, and said nothing. No warning to Elena, no call to the street security team outside, nothing. Daniel never called him, never sent a letter, never made a threat. He simply reached out quietly, one by one, to every corporate client, event booking company, and vendor that restaurant depended on. He didn't tell them what to do. He just let them know he was paying attention. Within 60 days, the restaurant's event calendar, the part of the business that kept the lights on, was empty. People in the city started talking, not loudly, in low voices, over lunch tables and in office hallways, about the man who hadn't made a single public statement, who hadn't gone to a newspaper or posted anything online, who had simply, methodically used everything he had built to protect the woman he loved and to make sure the people who failed her understood the cost of that failure. And then he did one more thing, something that nobody found out about for months. Maya, the nursing student who had stopped, who had bought Elena a coffee, who had tracked down a stranger's contact form just to make sure a hurt woman didn't sit alone in an alley, received a full scholarship to complete her medical degree, anonymous, no conditions, no announcement. When a journalist eventually traced it back to Daniel and asked him about it, he said this: "She did what a decent person does. That should be normal, since apparently it isn't. The least I could do was make sure it didn't cost her anything." The 3 attackers were convicted. They got the maximum sentence the law allowed. The executive who stepped over Elena never closed another deal of that size again. And Maya finished her degree. She is now a working nurse. Elena recovered fully. She still volunteers at the Children's Hospital every Thursday. She and Daniel don't talk about that afternoon much. But people who know them say something shifted. Not in a bad way. More like 2 people who looked at something really dark together and decided to hold onto each other tighter because of it. Here is what this story is really about. It is not about money. Plenty of wealthy people walk past hurt strangers every day. It is about what a person decides to do when the world shows them exactly who it is. Daniel Harmon didn't rage. He didn't perform. He just acted, completely, carefully, and without anyone's permission, to make things right. That is the kind of power that can't be bought. It has to be earned.